want to talk about our opponent. They're bigger, faster, stronger, more experienced, and on paper, they're just better, and they know it too. But I want to tell you something that they don't know. They don't know your heart.
Patchwork Heart Ministry presents Young Catholics Respond, a challenge for young people to stand up for the Catholic faith and confound the world with radical hope. Now, here's your host, Bill Snyder.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Young Catholics Respond. I am Bill Snyder. It's wonderful to be with all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'm excited today because I have a good friend, a longtime friend of Patchwork Heart Ministry on the show to be talking about his brand new book, which we're going to talk about today, all about having a joy-filled holiday season. And so Tony Agnesi is my guest. Tony, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today. You are certainly no stranger to our programs, but it's great to have you back once again.
Bill, it's wonderful to see you again and great to hear your voice. I've been looking forward to talking with you. I can remember back, gosh, it's got to be close to 10 years ago or something.
Yes.
I can remember sitting at the pool in Naples, Florida, doing a program on Patchwork Heart Ministries with you. That time we were just on the radio, but no video components to it. So this is kind of a treat.
Yes, it is. It really is, Tony. I'm excited, and technology advances rapidly here in those 10 years, right?
Sure does.
So
Sure does.
Here we are with all the fancy bells and whistles. But for people who, since it has been a little while, talk to us a little bit about your faith journey, who you are. You've written several books, and you've been an inspirational speaker for a long time. But share a little bit about yourself.
Be happy to. I've been speaking for about 40 years, and A Storyteller's Guide to a Joyful Holiday Season is my sixth book, and it's the fourth in the Storytellers series. Over the course of the years, Bill, I have had a wonderful career in radio and television over the course of 58 years, and I'm retiring here at the end of the year. And in that time, I have really taught and led by storytelling. I'm a storyteller. My grandmother was a storyteller. My mom was a storyteller. And so I've told a lot of stories. Jesus was a storyteller. We call them parables, but basically he communicated with stories. And if you remember the story, then you remember, what the story was about and the message that the story had. So I went off to college when I was younger and did my first English paper. I got a big giant F on the top with a lot of red ink, and a professor that said you'll never write above the fifth grade level, and that kind of stifled any writing I was going to do. And in about 2010, I started a blog called Finding God's Grace in Everyday Life. And in 2015, it was a runner-up for the 2015 Bloggy Awards internationally in the topic of spirituality, and the Legion Index said that I'm one of the top 500 Christians online, which was kind of interesting back then. I'm sure that number's gone way down since then, but when you go back that far. I started running again then, and in 2012 I wrote an article called "When My Children Have Lost the Faith," and it was published in a magazine, a charismatic magazine called Shalom Tidings. And since that article was published, over 500 churches, both Catholic and other Christian denominations as well, have published it in their church bulletin on a Sunday. It is a problem that you and I have discussed years past about the young people leaving the church. And that prompted me to write. I wrote a few stories. I asked a retired college professor that I see at daily mass to tell me what she thought. And she said, these are really wonderful stories. And I said, but more importantly, what level do I write at? And she said, about the sixth grade. So in 40 years, Bill, I'm up a grade. And so that kind of prompted me to write. The Storyteller's Guide to a Grace-Filled Life was my first book. There are 2 volumes of that. Wouldn't we all love to have a grace-filled life, huh? That'd be grace. Hail Mary, full of grace,
Yes.
And then my second book was called A Storyteller's Guide to Joyful Service. And two key words there. And one of them is joyful. And, there's a difference between happiness and joy. Happiness, I was happy when the Browns won 2 weeks ago and sad when they lost last week. So it wanes, it goes and comes. But joy comes from above, Bill. Joy comes from our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. It comes down from heaven. And that joy comes basically from serving others, by serving others. That's what that book is about. So in all of my books and all of my blogging and podcasting and radio shows that I've done, one of the things that people have always said to me is, Tony, there's just something special about your stories about the holiday season. And wouldn't it be great if you just put together a compilation of just those stories from Thanksgiving and Advent, Christmas and New Year's? And so what I did, it's more curation than it is writing. I went back, Bill, to 2010, and I looked at all of the blog posts, all of the podcasts that I've done, and all of the radio programs I've done. And the best material I've written about those four seasonal holidays is in the book. And there are 26 of those stories. Each of them is tied to scripture, as all of my books do. And then there's some questions for reflections at the end of each story. So you read a story and you have three things to think about, reflections that you can do with it. And so that's how the book came about. It actually started out this summer, Bill, as an Advent talk. I get asked to speak a lot during Lent, and not as much during Advent. So I said, well, I need to write an Advent-specific talk, and that's how it kind of got its start and turned into the book that was just released.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And for viewers, you're able to see that cover there. We just popped it up. I'll pop it up one more time there. But again, beautiful artwork, and it's relevant for this time of year, Tony. Right? This is the time of year when people are looking to have a joy-filled holiday season and a joy-filled Christmas. And navigating that can be difficult, right? I think there's a lot of challenges.
It really can. A deacon friend of mine, Deacon Roger Klaus here in Ohio, one of the things he does is he teaches religion at the local elementary school. So he goes into the second grade class and he says, kids, we've just entered a new liturgical season. Does anybody know what it's called? And all of the kids in the class kind of looked at each other and looked around the room, then looked in the sky, and nobody knew. And he goes, okay, I'll give you a hint. It starts with A. And again, the kids look around the room, they look at each other, they look at the ceiling, they look at the floor. He goes, all right, then I'll give you a second letter. The second letter is D, A-D. And they look around the room, and finally, little Billy in the back of the room raises his hand and says, I've got it. And Deacon says, what is it? He said, Advil. And, as funny as that is, Bill, when you think about it, many of us have an Advent season and many of us have an Advil season. Yeah. And I'll bet that there's a whole lot of people right now who are watching this or listening to us who are having an Advil season. It just goes and goes and goes, and you're running and you're buying gifts and doing things. And rarely do we sit back and do what Advent really asks us to do. And so you're right. Negotiating, navigating our way through this season is difficult. And part of the difficulty is that we have taken Advent and we've turned it into a secular season as well. I call it secular Advent. Now, it only's been around about maybe 10 years. It started out with Black Friday. Do you remember when we started with Black Friday, Bill?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, and then they came up with Gray Thursday. That's where as soon as you're done eating your Thanksgiving meal, you go shopping that night, right?
Yeah.
Because after all, thanking God can't last a whole day. You only need about a half a day to do that. You can get out and shop. And then we have Small Business Saturday and Cyber Monday and Giving Tuesday. And it all ends on Bring Back the Unwanted Gifts Week, somewhere right after the holidays. You see what happens? We've turned that thing into a different holiday. Mm-hmm. Secular Advent asked us to speed up and spend money now. Christian Advent asks us to slow down and prepare for the coming of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Secular Advent says spend money that you don't have on things you don't need under the pretense that it was on sale. And Christian Advent asks us to be thankful for what we have and to give to those who have little. Secular Advent says you've got to fight for your right for that last big screen television at Walmart. And even if it means we have to start a riot and fight with somebody to get it.
Yeah.
Christian Advent asks us to pray for peace in the world, right?
Yeah.
Secular Advent says every 7-year-old needs an iPhone 15, an Xbox, a PlayStation gaming system because they deserve it. Christian Advent reminds us that some children will have no gifts at Christmas. And wouldn't it be nice to buy something for a child who has little or nothing? You know, my wife loves the giving tree. We have a giving tree at our church, and you take a couple of names off the giving tree of people in need and buy for them. And, you know, my wife, she always waits. I said, why don't you take a few names off the tree? She always waits till the end. And she says, no, I want to take the names of those people who have been forgotten, the last people picked, if you will. You know, most people, even if we're trying to be generous and we're going to buy gifts for someone, we'll look through and make sure it's a child or make sure it's a girl or a boy and so forth. She likes to buy for those that are left over. So that's what I'm trying to do this year and every year, is to kind of prefer that Christian Advent and not get caught up in all of the hype of the secular holiday. And there's some things you can do to make that happen. But just to slow down and enjoy the season. You know, you've got a 2-year-old. There're just so many memories and things that I can conjure up. You know, my kids are grown adults in their 40s, but I can remember those times. And Bill, they don't last forever, so you've got to savor them and enjoy them. There's nothing more important at this time of year than the joy in the eyes of a child. And we can increase our mass attendance. You know, for a lot of people, that might mean going a second day during the week, or making sure, you know, for me, it was always daily mass. Increase our prayer time a little bit. You know, when you get really busy and you're running around doing things, sometimes you just need to sit down and spend a few minutes in thanksgiving and gratitude and reflect on the year and what God has granted you that year. And then I like to also pray at this time of year for people who have lost a loved one. You know, COVID did a terrible thing, Bill, when we lost grandparents and parents and so forth, and couldn't even have a proper calling hours, and funerals were limited to the number of people that could attend and so forth. A lot of people are grieving during this time of the year, and Christmas time is not only the happiest time of the year for people, but it can be the saddest time for people, you know, as well. And we need to be real conscious of that and try to be there for those people as well. And then finally, we can help someone in need, you know, picking a name off the giving tree, helping a family member that may have had a tough time. People lose jobs this time of the year. There's just so many things that we can do to make this an Advent season and not an Advil one.
You're exactly right. You know, there are so many really good practical suggestions. One of the reasons why I love talking with you, Tony, on Young Catholics Respond is because you give actionable, you know, things that people can implement in their life. And I think we live in a society, and you know, a lot of young people live in a society that they just see a lot of things that are fake around them, especially this time of year. And they long for that relationship, that real relationship with their Father in heaven. And you know, so having these, you know, practical things like you just were mentioning, you know, even something as simple as taking that, you know, little ornament off the giving tree and giving it some serious thought. You know, which is something we have at our church as well, and something that we do as well, and many Catholic churches around the country do that. So, folks, you know, that's a really good actionable thing that you can do, and it it is not something that is going to, be costing you a ton of money either. This is,
No.
something that you can give back. When I looked at the Giving Tree this year for us, and I took that ornament off of there, and I looked at it, and this. I tried to get somebody around the age of my son, because I was thinking, okay, that'll be something that's, not necessarily easy to do, but just relatable for me. Like, I'll pick something that's a good toy, right? And all it said on this thing was stickers. Stickers. And I'm thinking, my son has all these flashy toys and all these things, and this 3-year-old boy just wants stickers. And I brought it home to my wife, and and my wife goes, "We'll add some other toys to that. We're gonna add some other toys." And I said, "Yeah," but it just stuck with me for a few minutes as I'm taking that sticker. I'm like, taking that thing off and looking at it and going, stickers, man, wow. You know what I mean? So people are just so grateful for that.
I've seen young kids, and they want socks and a warm coat for Christmas. I mean, there are people that a warm coat. Well, my wife and I, we got a email from the local pregnancy center I've been involved with for over 30 years, and my wife sat on their board for 10 years. And we got an email that they were running short of winter coats for boys and girls, 2T, 3T, 4T. So as I've done in the past, my wife and I went out and bought, a dozen coats in different those sizes, 2, 3, boys and girls, and delivered them to the pregnancy center. And you walk away, and then I was back there for a meeting a few weeks later and noticed that those coats were gone. Some kids who really needed those coats came in, and that's that idea of joy, Bill. Not happiness, but just the joy that comes from knowing that you've done something. Young people want authenticity and authentic self-help and help for others, and they want it to be authentic. One of the things I do at Thanksgiving is past, but one of the things I do at Thanksgiving is I do a Thanksgiving rosary, and you can do it any time of the year. I do it about once a month, but what I do is I say a thank you on every bead. So as I pray the rosary, I say a thank you, for a variety of things. And people always say, well, you do the whole rosary? And I go, yeah. He says, don't you ever run out of things to thank God for? And I go, no, by the time I finish the rosary, I've thought of 15 or 20 more things to be thankful for. And I will tell you, at the end of that rosary, there is a warm feeling that comes over you that you go, Lord, I have been blessed. You have done so much for me. I am so grateful. And thank you. And it really sets you up to enjoy what Advent is to be like, and to move forward in Advent.
What a great idea. Oh my gosh, that's an amazing idea. It brings me to tears just to think of that. What an amazing idea that is. I want to ask you too, and I think, because a lot of young people, and we try to target this toward the that college age of kids, and as I get older, somebody suggested I start calling this program Middle-Aged Catholics Respond, but no, I wanted to know about those difficult holiday parties. I mean, are there any stories you have of young people, or because we get a dynamic at holiday parties, right, where some people are really grind on our gears, right? They grind on our gears, and we try to navigate that as young people, and they're like, man, I don't want to go to that party because I don't want to see Aunt so and so. She's always whatever. How do young people navigate that? How do we as young people figure that out?
There's always that one uncle, right? That is at every party. They say that fish and relatives have one thing in common: they both start to stink after 3 days, and sometimes that holds true when you have these holiday parties with relatives. How to negotiate them as best you can, Bill. There's always some conflict that happens in those. We try to limit politics and religion. Religion is, maybe we say grace before the meal, and that's about it. That the other part of it, we're talking about, people being joyful and happy, and wearing antlers, and they've got the Christmas sweater and so forth. And there are other people that are having a really, really difficult time at the holidays, and it's especially difficult for people that maybe have lost a job, they're unemployed, or have switched jobs, people that can't afford the mortgage payment, or can't afford their fees, their family, kids in college that are having a difficult time with a particular course or a particular professor. And the holidays don't seem as joyful, to them. The circumstances of a Merry Christmas is the farthest thing from their mind. And so, for those people, here's a few ideas. First of all, if you're alone or lonely, find your church or some community center that has a get together. I know we just had a concert here in town over the weekend where the high school band performed and the high school singers sang and so forth. That's an opportunity to kind of get out and about and meet people. I have found that as we get older, and we're talking to a younger audience, but I'll be 75 years old in February. And one of the things that older people have a trouble with is friendships, as one-to-one, eyeball-to-eyeball friendships. We have transferred most of our friendships online, and we have very little live contact with anybody. And if we can increase that, it makes a lot of sense. One of the things I like to do is call old friends too. You get on the phone. You and I haven't talked in a while, and gosh, when we connected a couple of weeks ago to set up the interview, here's somebody that I love and enjoy, and we haven't had a chance to talk and catch up. And you were just had a brand new infant the last time I talked with you. 2 years later, you've got a toddler and so forth. It just changes things. So just contacting people. And I've said this a number of times in interviews. When you call someone on the phone you haven't talked to for a while, you know what the first thing they usually say to you is, I was just thinking about you too. Why don't we, and it turns out to be a wonderful, wonderful conversation. Volunteering, volunteering at a homeless shelter, a soup kitchen, or anything is very, very satisfying and gratifying. There's a church in Akron, St. Bernard's. They have what they call the bologna room, where they feed lunch to people every day. They pack 100 sack lunches every day. A bologna sandwich, an apple, a bag of chips, and a cookie. And you'd be surprised the cars that will pull up, and mom gets out with 3 or 4 kids, and they all get their lunch and so forth. Volunteer to make the bologna sandwiches one day.
Yeah.
You don't have to do it every single day. It could be just that simple. And then, for the rest of us who are not having those problems, we can be useful too. We can be kind and understand that not everyone finds holidays joyous, and we can think of someone in our community or someone in our family, a widow, a widower, a single person, a divorced parent, a kid that isn't going home from school, is going to stay on campus and really doesn't have any family around him. And we can invite them to our house. I mean, my mom used to say, she would cook enough food for General Patton's army at the holidays, and certainly there's room for another plate or two at the table. How few of us do that and say, Aunt, somebody who's going to be alone, let's invite her over to spend the day with us and share some stories and so forth. Especially if someone has lost a loved one, to be able to get together and share stories of the memory of their loved one. It's amazing. There might be some tears, but I'll tell you, there'll be tears of joy just remembering the person that may have passed. And there's all kind of activities at churches and community centers and gift exchanges and so forth. And we can invite those people. We can help those people get through the holiday season. And then finally, as I said earlier, I pray for those people who find Christmas a difficult time of year. I pray that their hearts will be healed, and that their jobs will be found, and that our men and women in the military will return safely to their loved ones. And I pray for the alone. I pray for the lonely and those people in nursing homes. I pray for those with life-threatening illnesses who are worried that maybe this will be their last Christmas. And I pray for those with depression and mental illness that the Lord will bless them in a very special way this holiday. We can be that person, Bill, that does these things. And it doesn't take much. It just takes putting our mind in that Advent state of mind and not the Advil state of mind. And we can do it.
Absolutely. And I think as you said earlier in the program, and I agree with it 100%, is that Jesus used the stories and the parables to teach the greatest lessons in the gospel, because we relate to stories just as human beings. And so I encourage people to get a copy of your book, because when we look at the stories of others, we find something that's relatable in it, right? I mean, so there's something profound about what you're talking about, and again, you've made it practical, right? I mean, that this is not just something to laugh at; it's also something that to think about. You've got the discussion questions in the chapters, so people can then go and read the stories together and share their own experiences and put their own experience, again, make it relatable. And so if you're a young adult, if you're a middle-aged adult, it doesn't matter what age, these stories can help transform your holiday season. And Tony, I like that you used holiday season, and that it's spanning this entire season from Thanksgiving all the way through Christmas, the Epiphany, all of those things, because sometimes we get so focused on putting Christ in Christmas that we forget about putting Christ in Thanksgiving and Christ on the other 4 weekends of Advent, right?
Exactly. The book is broken into 4 chapters: Thanksgiving, Advent, Christmas, New Year's. We take people through the new year, and there are stories for in each of those areas. Let me share one Christmas story with you, and I'll share it for a reason. A couple of days ago, I got an email from a pastor in a church in Australia, and he said, Tony, I read one of your stories in the book about your Christmas train, and we're going to set up a train set in the church hall, and I would love to be able to read that story to our congregation. Would you grant permission to do that? And of course, Bill, I would, and did, and so we had a wonderful email exchange over the holidays. And the story is about my Christmas train, if I can share it with your audience.
Yeah.
As a kid, I was about six years old. The only thing I wanted for Christmas was the train set in the 1954 Lionel catalog. Man, that was it. That's what I wanted for Christmas. And I remember Christmas morning that year, I got up underneath the tree and I grabbed a box that I knew could not be the socks or underwear, because usually that's the first one we open. And I said, this is about the size of that train set. And I tore open the paper and the wrapping and sure it was the train set from the 1954 Lionel catalog, the exact one that I wanted. And interestingly enough, my parents said to me, son, your best friend's dad is unemployed and couldn't afford a whole lot of things for him for Christmas. Wouldn't it be nice if you gave up one of your presents to your friend so that he'd have something at Christmas time? And all kind of thoughts went through my mind. The first was, I could probably go another 6 months with these same underwear and socks, so maybe that would be the one I would give up. But my dad said, you know what, son? Give him the present you think that would make him the happiest. And I thought about it for a long, long time, and I knew which one would make him the happiest. It was the train set. And so I said to my dad, well, I'm going to give up my train. And so I began tearing into the packages under the tree, opened the underwear, opened the socks. And as I did, I looked behind the tree and here was another package, the same size as the other. And as I pulled it out and opened it, it was another train set. It was the exact train set I wanted from the 1954 Lionel catalog, testing me to see if I was willing to give up something for someone in need. Now, it's a great story, but before you nominate me for sainthood, let me tell you something that I believe. You know, the Christmas story always haunted me, Bill, because in all of Bethlehem, not a single man or woman offered their bed to a pregnant woman who was about to give birth with child so that she could have that child comfortably. Not a single man or woman in all of Bethlehem. And so she has to have her child in a stable in a manger. But I submit that if you asked a group of 6-year-olds, would you be willing to give up your bed for tonight so that Mary could have her child in comfort? I'll bet 100% of those 6-year-olds would pass the test. We have to live as if we're children, and children are so generous when they are challenged in their generosity.
What a beautiful story. And Tony, thank you so much for sharing it with me and our audience. Powerful, powerful stuff. And, you know, before we wrap up, I want to ask you where people can get a copy of the book, because, you know, obviously they're going to want a copy of not only that story, but all the other stories that you put in the book, because it's just, again, so powerful.
All of my books are available at all of the online bookstores, especially Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million, any of those. I suggest people go to Amazon, especially if you've got Prime, where you don't have to pay for shipping. The book is an easy read. It's 100 pages, Bill. It's $7.99 on Amazon. It's an easy read. You can read it in an hour and a half or so, but the questions after each story allow you to take a day, maybe one a day there's 26 stories, one a day over the next 23, 24 days, and a couple of New Year's stories that you might take, and just reflect on them and do it in a way that you want that Advent that we talked about earlier in the broadcast. It's available also in Kindle version. So, you know, if you're one of those, my wife likes to flip pages in a book, and some people just would much rather read it on their iPad or their Kindle, but the book's out there. And again, it's a seasonal book. We talk about, there are a number of Christmas stories. There are a couple of really great thought pieces for the new year. And I think, my hope is that someone finds something in the book, even if it's one thing that motivates them and gets them to have a joyful season in 2024.
Well, Tony, knowing you and knowing your writing and knowing your ability to tell stories, that's definitely going to happen to our audience reading the book. So, oh no, thank you, Tony. This has always been awesome. I wish you a joyful holiday season yourself, to you and your family. Merry Christmas from all of us here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you again, Bill, and enjoy that wonderful little family of yours, and have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season, a joyful and blessed Christmas.
I shall. And folks, I encourage you to go over to Tony's book, and anywhere that it is sold online, Amazon, Books A Million, whatever, go and get a copy. But until next time, from all of us here at Patchwork Heart Ministry, may God bless you and keep eating to those Catholic hearts.
Young Catholics Respond is a production of Patchwork Heart Ministry. For more information about this and all our media programs, visit patchworkheartradio.org. To learn how you can support our ministry or become a sponsor, visit patchworkheart.org.